Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you today. I'm James Howard Tripp. I'm the chairman and CEO of StageZero Life Sciences. And we're a company that focuses not only on finding cancer early, but actually also on the interventions that help you if you have cancer, as well as trying to keep you cancer-free. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. If I had one of our experts on metabolic pathway dysfunction with me today, he'd be telling you that essentially all of the causes that you see on the left-hand side, everything from chronic infection to disturbed sleep, obesity, diet, physical inactivity, are all part of causes in metabolic pathway dysfunction, which leads to inflammation, and inflammation leads to the consequences we see on the right-hand side. We know about metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. You probably didn't know that it leads to depression, but it also cardiovascular disease, we know that. But the big one, of course, that we're all focused on is cancer. And the really good thing about what we're talking about today is liquid biopsy. And we're one of the very early pioneers of what is liquid biopsy. And I think the way that we talk about it is sort of as following. We've known for a long time that you can, for example, take a sample of blood and you can look at cholesterol. We can break it down into the various lipoproteins, and we can see whether you may or may not be developing cardiovascular disease. It becomes a little different when you go to something like cancer. It's perhaps a little more technical in terms of where you go. But most of what we focused on is using blood once you have been shown to have cancer. I think the way we talk about it is you have the biopsy, it's the piece of tissue that's in front of the pathologist. You're diagnosed as having cancer. We now begin to treat it. And if we see within those cells that essentially, let's say they're small red Volkswagen Beetles with yellow wheels, we, instead of having to go in and sort of constantly take samples of your body, we can now take a sample of blood. And so what we do is we look to see whether under treatment, those little red, yellow Volkswagens with yellow wheels are reducing in number. If afterwards shows the treatment's effective, we can show over time whether they're changing. Do they develop black wheels? So is it mutating in some way? And all of this enables us to use blood in all of this. And I think it's made an absolute sea of difference in terms of where we go. A small number of the companies like ours are doing it a little differently in that we're going early. We're taking the same approach, but instead of working post-diagnosis, we're trying to make sure that we can find it earlier. And there are different approaches to this. One is obviously cell-free DNA, which would go, or circulating tumor cells. That goes back to my analogy of little red Volkswagen Beetles. What we're looking for is we're looking to see whether it might be a Volkswagen Touareg. Is it something different? What is it early? And why is that so important? This is it. The majority of cancers, if you look at it, have 5-year survival rates, and these are most of the major cancers there, but they have 5-year survival rates that are typically in the 90s. Some obviously like stomach cancer or liver cancer or pancreatic cancer have lower 5-year survival rates if found early. But the major difference is you move from that sort of 90% or 90-odd% 5-year survival rate to dramatically different rates if you find it late. And we always talk to colorectal cancer, where you drop from about 90% to about 14%. Look at what happens with prostate cancer. You drop from 99% to 30%. Look at breast cancer, 99% to 28%. All of this just says you have to find it early. And in order to find it early, you have to have technologies that actually allow you to go down that pathway. So what is it that we do? Well, in our case, we take a sample of your blood, but we work on the basis of the fact that circulating blood reflects in a detectable way what is occurring throughout the body. It's the subtle changes that occur in cells due to injury or disease. And think about it, you've got white blood cells, you've got platelets, you've got all of the immune response cells interacting with disease processes in the body each and every second. These cause changes in gene expression. We can find those changes in gene expression. We measure them via mRNA. And we named and patented this technology the Sentinel Principle platform. And this is what has allowed us to move forward with it. We've developed the first mRNA blood test that detects multiple cancer signatures from a single sample of blood. We break it into female cancers and male cancers. We're particularly thrilled on the female side. We think women typically are underserved from a healthcare perspective, and this works extremely well. But we've focused very strongly on the cancers that have standard of care. So in other words, we could go extremely broad. There's no end to what we can do from our side. But we focus very clearly on those cancers that have absolute standard of care, because what we want to do is to work with you on top of that. And we go from there. If we've gone deeper, we'll stay with a smaller number, but we're trying to go as deep as possible. And so if I take colorectal cancer, for example, what we're working on is not just do you have colorectal cancer or do you not? Well, we're actually breaking it down into the various stages. So do you have polyps? Do you have precancerous polyps, which is before you actually develop the actual cancer? Or if you are developing colorectal cancer, is it stage 1 or stage 2, obviously with much better survival prospects, or stage 3 or stage 4? Within all of this, as we go on down, it's terribly important that we tell the person who's doing the colonoscopy what it is so that they know whether to look for it. It's a big difference whether you tell them to look for polyps, whether you tell them to look for a stage 2 cancer. And so these are the pieces we're going. And so we're taking a similar approach as we move out across the other cancers. Breast is next, lung after that. And so we're adding on to those pieces as we drive on through. So limited number of cancers, but the cancers that are most frequent, most common, but we're going deep in terms of what it is. So who and what are we? Well, as I mentioned, we're one of the early pioneers in liquid biopsy. We've developed Aristotle as well as a series of other cancer tests. But Aristotle is the one that we've always been focused on. It's really been in development for 20 years. And it is the first mRNA gene expression multi-cancer blood test. We operate out of a highly accredited lab in Richmond, Virginia. We have world-class clinical specialists. We have our own oncologists. We have our own specialists all the way through this. And we're all across North America, so strongly in the US and Canada. We're also in the UK and Europe. And we're also in a smattering of other countries. We have patients in India, for example. We have patients in Australia and New Zealand. And we do most of this via telehealth. You can physically come to us and see us in one of our clinics, but we do a lot of this via telehealth. I think the final piece with this, and perhaps what separates us from some of the other groups as well, is that we're not only focused very clearly on finding cancer, Aristotle being the example of this, but should you have cancer, we will take you into a program or would offer you a program like TREAT, which is the Care Oncology Protocol, where essentially what we do is we work with you on the various metabolic pathways, looking to give you a better outcome together with standard of care. So we work together with your oncologist, our oncologists work with yours in order to look for better outcomes. We've pulled that forward into this program called AVRT. And AVRT is focused entirely on the metabolic pathways that cause the disease, including cancer. And what we do is we will introduce strategies to you to work with you, again, entirely physician guided, as we take you down this. Why is this important? Well, cancer's scary. Someone tells you you have or you may have cancer, that's a pretty earth-shaking event for anyone. So I think making sure that someone is with you, can hold your hand, can guide you down this is important. I think this is part of the message that I know Teen Cancer America wanted to get across, is not just that there are strategies by which particularly younger people can now find cancer, But there are strategies by which you can work with groups to either look for good outcomes or, in fact, even more importantly, try and prevent getting there in the first place. Thanks for joining us today.